Welcome to Outside the Frame, a podcast for wedding industry professionals to learn how to be better humans in business and life.
We're your hosts,
Kaitlyn of Skywater Photo and Film,
and Kaylin of Wandering Wildflower Films. We're here to create a supportive and meaningful space for diverse voices to discuss social and personal issues that impact wedding pros.
Our hope is that collectively, we can bring more of ourselves and the things that matter to the forefront of our work in the wedding industry and give all of us the courage to focus our business around who we are and what we care about.
We're so glad you're joining us. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey, podcast friends, I'm on here going solo today. Kaitlyn wishes she could be here and knows just how important our discussion is, but she is attending a funeral and we want family always to come first. And I know she's looking forward to listening in on the conversation later. Today, I'm here with one of my closest industry friends, Jennie. I know Jennie as a very supportive friend, loving mother, and fellow queer wedding professional, who I met several years ago while living in Colorado. Jennie is the owner and lead photographer at Jennie Photography, which she started in 2012. About 6 years ago, she started niching down to focus more on queer couples and be more vocal about celebrating the LGBTQ+ community. About 5 years ago, she also took over LGBTQ I Do, which is an online wedding resource for queer couples searching for inclusive and accepting wedding vendors in Colorado. She's also the founding partner of the Queer AF Engagement Party, which is an unconventional wedding showcase which highlights queer and allied vendors in Colorado's wedding community and works to connect couples searching for inclusive vendors in a fun and different wedding showcase experience. They just hosted their second showcase in May. Welcome to the podcast, Jennie. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here as well.
Let's dive in. We'd love to hear a little bit more about your own queer journey from when you started as a photographer to slowly niching down to queer couples over time. What was that like?
It took a long time, probably a lot longer than I think it should have. When I first started, it was, I guess, when somebody asked me, like, what would be your ideal clients? Who would you want to work with? My first response was, I'd like to work with LGBTQ plus couples. But at the time, I don't feel like I had a very strong avenue to make that happen. I started my business before marriage equality was passed. And so it was a lot of commitment ceremonies. People were just starting to talk about how can you have a wedding as a queer person. And it didn't seem like I could have enough business or I could have enough clientele to do that. And I think I was also a little scared of that too, of putting myself in a box that wasn't necessarily business sustainable at the time. And I kind of regret that I didn't do that sooner because it feels like that should have been part of me and what I wanted, but I was a little afraid of it at the time.
Well, I think we all have a little fear with that too. So I think that's totally normal.
I was new to photography too. And so I think there was a little bit of imposter syndrome. Can I even do this in general, much less put myself in a lane that was very, very narrow at the time and still run a successful business. So there was definitely a little bit of that too.
And so then was there a certain moment or what kind of changed over time for you to start niching down?
I think I realized that I just really, really loved photographing queer couples, that was what brought me the most joy. And there was a space where a lot of people needed that reassurance and that ability to have a photographer that they could trust within the community. And I just saw that over and over from people I talked to, from queer couples who did find me about the challenges they had found, just finding a vendor that felt supportive or that wasn't asking weird questions or that gave them weird vibes. And being able to be that kind of person for them just felt so satisfying and so fulfilling, and like a gift that I could give them to make this experience that much more meaningful for them. And when I realized how impactful that could be, and it was what I really enjoyed photographing, it was kind of a no-brainer. It's like, I should just do this, make it part of my story, make it a very visible part of my brand, and see what happens. And it's been wonderful since then.
Yeah, I love that. And how has your own journey as a queer person kind of intersected with how you show up for couples?
Let's see. So I got married before marriage equality passed as well. And so there was a handful of places that it was legal to get married. That was kind of changing every quarter as different states enacted different rules or different laws. And I know one of the things that we had to navigate was asking every single vendor that we looked for whether they would work with somebody that was a same-sex couple. And I just didn't love having to ask all the time and to not know what kind of answer you were going to get. And we actually searching for our photographer, we had one photographer answer that question was like, with, does it matter if I've ever photographed a same-sex couple? And I'm thinking, well, it kind of matters to me. And the fact that you would even ask that question means that you are probably not going to be the person that I want to work for
Mm.
because or work with because you don't really understand why it could be important to me.
Yeah.
And I just wanted, I feel like starting my own business and like really working in with the community, I just wanted people to feel that assurance before they even like talk to me, that they could know that this was something that they wanted and a person that they could trust and that they could have open conversations with.
I think that it does go a long way to show that you have personal experience to be able to kind of relate to what a lot of your couples go through, I think, as they're shopping for vendors.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, because I am so visibly open about my family and my own like queerness, I think people see that and have a sense of familiarity and just immediate, like, you're going to understand anything that I'm going to say to you, even before we get into the nitty gritty of like what it would be to work together. And it's not like every queer person is going to hire me, but there's that added layer of you understand some of the things that I might be bringing to the table within my own experience getting married. And you will have some empathy and some understanding for what that could be like for me and hopefully
Mm.
be able to support me in that. And I think that's really powerful for a lot of people.
Yeah, it gives them the sense of, not just relatability, but almost, yeah, just understanding from the get-go what that feels like, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I
very
think
powerful.
relating to people on a personal, empathetic level is about experiences that you have in common is is something that not everybody gets to do, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, especially in our industry, right? Where like that's such a huge part of the work that we do.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's so many. I mean, it varies by location, it varies by state, it varies by communities that you're a part of, and some people don't have that in their home communities. So, I mean, we work with a lot of people out of state in Colorado, and Colorado is a very open and accepting place, but not all of our neighboring states are. And so, for people to have not even be able to experience that kind of safety and understanding in their regular life, their day-to-day life, much less their getting married life, um, is really cool I feel like it's even deeper, more deeply felt by those couples because it's something that they just can't find in their home communities.
Yeah, that almost brings that kind of hits it on the nose for the next question that I was going to ask, which is what about LGBTQ weddings are so special to you?
I think it's seeing people who maybe don't get to celebrate who they are in every space of their life be able to really commit to the joy that is being a part of the community. I think one of the big things that I've been resonating a lot with lately is this sense of joy as resistance, which is it comes up a lot in queer spaces. I don't know if people have heard about it in other contexts or in other locations, but it's finding joy in being who you are and really trying to show that you're not going anywhere by making that joy visible. And I think for a lot of people in the queer community, when they get to a wedding experience, that's really what they're trying to do. They want to take their relationship and make it as visible as they can for the people that mean the most to them and really embrace that experience of joy together with each other and within their community. And there's so much appreciation for the ability to be able to do that within their wedding experience. I've seen so many couples make references to like they'll read part of the Supreme Court ruling that made marriage legal nationwide, or they'll acknowledge all of the queer people that came before them that didn't have the ability to get married that they now can just do because it's legal for now. And so just knowing that people acknowledge the history and still want to honor that and embrace that and celebrate that for themselves is just such a beautiful thing to watch and to be a part of. And it just gives me this like deep sense of joy to be there with them while they experience that.
Yeah, it's so frustrating that we're kind of potentially being thrown for a loop again. I would love to also know, are there certain aspects of, queer love stories in general that you feel like the wedding industry hasn't really been able to, doesn't hold a space for or actively ignores?
It's a good question. I think it is a lot easier for straight industry. The wedding industry is very straight, very heteronormative. I think it's a lot easier for relationships that appear more typical to be accepted and supported. So, for example, two cis women who might both be wearing a dress is going to be a
Mm.
lot more accepted by others outside of the queer community within the wedding industry than maybe two trans people who have a very fluid identity of how they want to express themselves and how they feel the most comfortable and authentic themselves. And the space for those individuals to be themselves is a lot narrower and is a lot less openly accepted by a lot of people in the community. And I think that's something that definitely needs to change. And that's something that we have a lot of work to do. But I would love to see more gender expression and gender identity and outward expression of personality become norm in the wedding space. And it just doesn't exist in the broad sense. Like there's pockets, but it's not a everyone everywhere feels the same way.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any ideas as far as like how we can go about making that change and helping the industry to kind of move in that direction?
Oh, that's hard.
It
Um,
is.
I mean, so much is local to start with. I suppose it's kind of how every grassroots thing starts at a local level. And I think people within certain communities can make efforts and make inroads in that within their local space. And I mean, part of what I love about Colorado is that there is more willingness to do that overall. I think from a legislative standpoint, those protections exist in Colorado. And then also, I think specifically within the Denver wedding community, there are a number of individuals who really also believe in that kind of equity within the wedding space and want to do their own part to create that same acceptance and visibility for people that they work with. Um, that doesn't exist in a lot of places. It probably exists more in big cities,
Yeah.
honestly, and a lot of other places. But I think the more that we as those individuals who believe in that can visibly show our work and show how beautiful it is and tell the stories of the people who we photograph or who we work with, the more people get exposed to it, the more they kind of see, oh, that's something maybe I should be thinking about more. And
Mm.
I think it starts slowly and hopefully has a kind of a ripple effect, but you're going to hit the like stones in the water somewhere where it's going to be like, nope, we're stopping here because that's what society is right now.
Yeah, starting at like the grassroots level and idea, is that part of the initiative behind the Queer AF engagement party and other things that you're kind of involved in?
We really wanted to find something that could celebrate again to that like joy, being able to show your joy is to allow the queer community to have a place to really celebrate their relationships that they can't find in other wedding showcase spaces. So we've done a little bit of promoting of our events at other showcases, like the big giant one that exists in Colorado. And it's incredible the number of people that are like, oh, like that's what we need. Like that's where we want to go. Like we don't feel included here. We don't feel seen here. We get asked weird questions that do not pertain to our relationship, do not make us feel comfortable. What we need is a space where we can be completely ourselves and know that all the vendors that we are going to come in contact with accept us for who we are and want to help celebrate us for who we are. And trying to make that experience really fun for people, a little less serious, a little bit more like this is what the queer community is about. And this is where we can all feel open and safe was really like a driver in trying to create that event. And just seeing the response that we've gotten, the positivity that comes from it, the number of people that are so appreciative of having that space to be is it makes it worth it. It's so cool to see that community come together and be so excited to be in a place that really accepts them together.
I really love that. I think that that can be really powerful, and who knows what kind of impact that might have over time. It does make me even think about the other wedding shows that I've been participating in, ones that I have coming up. For anybody like me in that position who's, actively trying to build a network and trying to market themselves in unique ways through things like a big wedding expo, what would you say are just a handful of things that people can consider as people are coming up to their booth, as they're thinking about advertising and stuff at these events? What are some things that you think could help make these bigger expos be a little bit more inclusive?
So, I mean, the expos themselves probably have a lot of work to do on the
Yeah.
back end, but as an individual vendor, the things that you can do to control it, a lot of it is visibility, having proof that you have worked with members of the queer community to showcase at your booth. So, whether that's photographs, if you're a photographer, hopefully that's an easy thing to do because you will make the effort to create content that could reach a wider audience. But if you're a wedding planner or a florist, using photos or images from photographers you've worked with that also showcase queer couples along with your work, I think is really important. Like the visual aspect is so important. Like if a queer person sees a giant photo of a queer couple across the room, that's going to say something to them immediately, that they're going to want to go over and at least talk to you and see what you're about and kind of see what kind of reception. And that's going to like kind of beeline them to you as opposed to your neighbors who don't show that because they can visibly see examples of your work. So that's probably like the easiest thing you could do. And then a lot of it is also creating space for language, the appropriate language that doesn't put things into a binary. So eliminating things like bride and groom from your vernacular, whether that's on your website and how you talk to people in your info taking forms at an expo. If you're putting names, you're not putting bride and groom, you're putting partner one, partner two, or couples names. Just taking out the gendered language that exists in the wedding space and replacing it with something that's very neutral. Those go a long way. And then one thing that I found is really powerful for queer couples is asking pronouns. So doing that in person, doing that on your inquiry forms, doing that on any sign up form you might have at your booth, wearing your own pronouns on your own name tag to show that you understand that this is an important part of people's identity and you want them to feel comfortable using that language with them. I think those are all steps you can do to make yourself more visibly allied, whether you're part of the community or not. And all of those things are very noticeable to queer couples. They pick up on them instantly and they deem you as somebody worth talking to because of it.
Yeah, I think that's all super helpful for anybody out there. I've been brainstorming. I'm like, can I bring my the little rainbow flag that I have from the wedding that you and I worked together on? Still,
Yeah.
I have that, hanging up behind me every day. And so I'm like, maybe
Yeah.
I can bring that. Maybe instead of I know plenty of people who are constantly asking questions to couples attending these events of like, oh, well, who's the bride or whatever, and instead just say, who's getting married? Like
Exactly.
that's an easy switch, right?
Yeah. Well, and that flag that you have in your office, like that says so much. Somebody gets on a video call with you and they see the flag and they're like, okay, I can feel more comfortable in this space immediately. And you haven't even said anything to them yet.
Correct.
Like
Yep.
those little things go so far in making people feel safe. And I think it's also important for straight couples to see that too. It's not just queer couples, but a lot of people in the straight community also believe in equality and equity and inclusivity and having vendors that align with those values, even if they themselves don't identify as part of that community, is really important for a lot of people. I think especially like Gen Z and younger, like it's more and more important for people to hire companies that have values and views that they believe in themselves, even if they don't identify as part of that community. So you're probably doing yourself a favor with anybody that you talk to in those spaces.
That's a fantastic point. Yeah, we've talked about that a lot on our podcast already about sharing your values and the importance of sharing your values. I think this also kind of makes me curious though, like even for couples who maybe don't identify as queer, and maybe it's for people who, great, Gen Z, all these younger generations are already having that be like super important to them and making sure that their values align well. But what would you say even for like couples who don't identify as queer? Like, why do you think that as they're shopping for vendors, that inclusion and representation is important for them?
I mean, I think it shows just awareness of the world around you. And not everybody who gets married is really going to hold those same values. Like you're going to meet people that don't actually align with those kind of values. And you've probably talked about this a lot. That's almost as important, is being able to weed out the people who are not a good fit for you because they don't align with your values. I think for anybody older, it just kind of shows the importance of like where things should be going and the things they should be considering. And if they have any small bit of them that feels like that could be important, that's worth exploring for them. I think every little step that anybody could take to kind of get outside of what is traditional in the wedding space is never a bad thing.
Yeah, and I've been thinking too more recently just how many people still maybe don't quite feel safe or ready yet to open themselves to that sort of thing. And so even for people, couples out there who are maybe thinking, oh, well, I'm not queer and I don't know anybody who's queer. Why do I care? I was like, are you sure? Like, you don't know 100% everyone in your family, everyone on your guest list, maybe even anybody who's like bringing a partner or, if they're bringing somebody with them as like their plus one, how do you know 100% that everybody there also shouldn't also be at a place, be somewhere where there's going to be vendors who are also going to be super respectful of that no matter what, right? I have to keep reminding myself that that is also a possibility.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's, from a business perspective, I've definitely had couples hire me because I'm part of the queer community because they know some of their guests will be, and they want them to feel comfortable in the space. So even if they themselves don't identify, they understand that other people will find safety and security in that. And that's important to them because they love the people that they are bring in to celebrate with them. So that it just opens you're right, it opens your network in that way too.
Everything is so important, even for people, who maybe don't identify that way. I feel like it can just automatically make things easier, like easier for them to relate, easier for them to feel comfortable with you, even if they don't identify that way. I also wanted to ask you, have you ever experienced moments where you felt tokenized or pressured to fit into a certain version of LGBTQ representation?
It's a good question.
This was from Kaitlyn, who wishes she could be here.
Yeah. No, I know. I would have liked to have seen her face. I feel like I am very privileged in that I could be straight passing to anybody that I come across. So my identity is not always obvious to people that I work with or people. I mean, obviously the couples who hire me know, but like the guests that might show up at their wedding may not necessarily know that about me. I don't know if I've ever been felt pressured to be like tokenized in a certain way. I think maybe more often put pressure on myself to feel like, do I know everything there is to know about the queer community? Do I understand identities well enough to make people who identify in a different way than I do within the community feel comfortable? Like, am I going to put my foot in my mouth inadvertently in my best efforts to try to support all of my couples because there's just a part of the community that I don't understand myself or that I don't have as much experience with myself? So I think I'd probably put more pressure on myself to not get it wrong or to not, make somebody feel uncomfortable in a way that I don't want to, because that's certainly never my intention. But yeah, I mean, I'm a straight passing, been queer a long time. So I fit into the older generation of like what queer looks like. So I probably just have a narrower view of what is part of the culture now, I guess, that is maybe a little limiting in my own interactions with people.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, not just from like the outside in, but just, from the inside out of like, oh, well, how am I presenting myself today? I feel that pretty often of like, yeah, I I pass as straight. I'm in a, straight looking marriage. But yeah, I've always felt as though, do I need to be, presenting myself as like, oh, the girly girl and like because I'm the woman in the relationship and I should be doing X, Y, and Z and that sort of thing. And so I think that it's helpful for all of us to realize that um, all of this is like a journey. We're all learning different things. I've said this before on the podcast too. It's something for us all to continue learning how to be more ourselves and even feeling more comfortable. I think you and I have talked about this in the past privately, but even just being more comfortable considering the words that we use and saying, I'm queer and being
Yeah.
part of the community, because being able to say that I'm part of the community still sometimes feels like, where do I belong? Right. And I think that that's really hard for a lot of people. So we're constantly being our hardest critic, I think, in that sense.
Yeah. And, bringing up the word queer is really a interesting point too, because for a lot of people that are just slightly older than us, that was a very stigmatizing word and something that was really offensive to be used. And now, as more people enter the community, as there's I say that in like you're choosing, but um, as the younger generation is much more open to identities and queerness than a lot of older generations were as a whole. And I think that word has been kind of reclaimed and taken as part of the community. But I even myself had a really hard time making that transition. For myself, that's definitely how I choose to identify now. Like that feels the most all-encompassing for kind of how I feel about myself. But it was really hard to say for the first couple of years. I was trying to use it more in the business space, and it felt clunky. It felt, oh, am I really supposed to be saying this? Like, I'm not comfortable with this. But it was a part that I felt like I needed to move myself forward in, because it was so common in the younger generations, and it was such a part of the vernacular of the community. And really, when I took a step back, it was the identity that I resonated with the most. But it was so hard to get past that. Like, okay, I can do this now. I can say this about myself. I can say this about the people I work with, and it's okay, because it wasn't okay for so long.
And do you think some of your couples are coming around to that as well? Like, even if they're not part of the younger generation, but that, they still are coming around to either identifying or at least being more accepting of using that term more often?
I think I see it more often for sure. I think it's interesting. I do still see a generational difference. So if I work with couples they came out later in life, maybe they've had other previous relationships that were not part of the queer community or queer experience, I still hear a lot of same sex usage, LGBT usage, which is totally fine. Like those
Mhm.
are all acceptable terms, but I definitely see it like queer used less. And then I will get on calls with people, and they'll say the word queer, and they're like, is that an okay word for me to use? Like they're still filling out themselves. Like, is this something that is okay to use in a space? But I do see it more and more that people accept it. They like it. It's very umbrella in a lot of ways. You don't have to specifically identify your sexual orientation within that word. And it allows freedom for fluidity and space for identities that I think a lot of people like. So I do see it getting used a lot more.
I think that that's really, really cool. Being a little bit more fluid and open in general, I feel
Yeah.
like is going to go a long way over time.
I think that's important for a lot of people. I mean, the younger generation embraces that very well. Just like, why put yourself in a box when you don't know yourself very well yet? Like, give yourself the space to figure out who you are without putting a label on it that you feel like you're going to get stuck into. I like that about it.
Another question Kaitlyn had sent to me. Kaitlyn was curious, have you ever had to turn down an inquiry, fire, or step away from a client because your values didn't align? And what did that teach you about yourself?
I think I probably fell into the space of, before I was really visible in my business about my own queerness and like the experience I want to create for people, I probably ended up with folks that were a little less accepting. And maybe I would learn that more as I got into their wedding day, and I'd hear guests say something, or I'd hear a wedding party, like men especially, in this very like, oh, don't get too close to somebody, they might think you're gay kind of, speak. And at that point, you can't do anything. You're in the middle of a wedding. Like, you're not gonna, well, at least I was not gonna rock the boat. I was not gonna call people out. Like, this was not the place to do that. But I think as I have become more visible, I attract the people whose values align with me. And so that doesn't really become an issue. And it's actually like so wonderful to see men, especially like parts of wedding parties where men are just like, let me hug you and I'm gonna like kiss you on the cheek and I'm not gay and it doesn't matter. And like, I'm just gonna show affection and friendship and support in any physical way that I want to, because I'm that secure in myself. And I feel like I see that more and more with like the right kinds of people finding me, because they all kind of embrace that within their own life, that that's the space they want to live in. And you shouldn't be judging people for their actions or their, how affectionate they are to people. And I think that's really cool to see that transition. So no, I don't think I've had to fire anybody. And I don't think they would hire me if they cared. Like, if that wasn't going to fit with them, I think at this point they wouldn't hire me.
Yeah, I think it's pretty evident now, and I'm glad to hear that it's been helpful to kind of see that difference between before you had come out as being like a big part of your brand, right? Like there's a difference there, I think, and hopefully at least, it sounds like you also didn't like deal with any, harassment in that sense. Because I would hope that if you or anybody else were in that position, that you should know that it's totally okay if you feel completely unsafe and being harassed, like as uncomfortable as that might be to leave in the middle of a wedding day, that you are well within your right, hopefully, if you have a solid
Yeah.
enough contract that
Yeah.
that you should be covered for that.
Yeah, it is in my contract. And thankfully, I've never felt like uncomfortable enough that I needed to call on that clause. And I think that's part of, the fact that I'm very straight passing. Like I can hear those comments. I can just feel like y'all are idiots in my head and just move on with it. And I'm not going to have that directed at me because they don't know. And I guess maybe there's a little safety in that. I did have one instance where I photographed one of the members of the couple was trans, and their parents were there, and they were much, much older, probably like 70s, 80s. And the mom especially like struck up a conversation with me and was talking about the bride as her former self and using the wrong pronouns and using the wrong names. And I was really uncomfortable, but I also I did not do a good job of like advocating for my couples in that space. That certainly made me take a look inward of like, why didn't I say something? This couple hired me. They know that I love and support them for who they are. I should be advocating for them in a space that is that blatantly disrespectful to who they are as people. And it was weighed against family dynamics. And like, it's not my family and they're not my relationships. And I didn't really know where my place was in that instance. And I look back on it and I feel really bad that I didn't do more to advocate for like who my couple was. So I would say I've thought about that instance a lot. And like, if I were to be in the same position, what could I do differently that would show my support of my couple and hopefully not piss somebody off really badly, but just show my support.
Are you thinking that like maybe even just like a gentle nudge of correcting the pronoun, mid-sentence or something like that? I think it is a fine balance, right? A
Yeah.
balancing act when you're dealing with other relationships. And then, yeah, it's just beyond just like, making a slight correction, just kind of like nudging them in that direction of like, hey, like we're here on their wedding day. Maybe you should be using this other pronoun that they prefer. That makes me think, is it something that might also be good to have in preparation calls with couples and asking, are there any family members that I should be aware of? And if I do run into anything, like, and maybe they're totally fine. Maybe they're like, no, everyone in attendance is extremely supportive, X, Y, and Z. But if there is anybody that you should be aware of, like, asking their preference, like, do you want me to stand up for you? Is
Yeah.
that okay? Or is that a line that I shouldn't be crossing?
That's a really great idea, actually. And yeah, I feel like I really like that. I mean, I think we ask about difficult family dynamics in general in a lot of questionnaires, but you're thinking like divorces or people who can't stand to be in the same room with each other. You're not often thinking about how somebody's gender identity might play in with their family dynamics. And that would be a really good way to get at being able to prepare yourself for like if something comes up, what you would do ahead of time to be able to think about it ahead of time. Because I think that was part of it. I just hadn't, it came out of nowhere. I had like no time to think about like, oh, what am I supposed to be saying in the situation? I didn't expect to run into it. So that's a really great idea. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, who
Yeah.
knows? I love all the ideas that come out of our conversations. It really,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
We
always
do
so
that a lot.
fun. One of the last questions that I had before we kind of, wrap up, or if there's any other thoughts that you have, I was just going to ask, from your experience and your perspective, what do you think are some things that the wedding industry can do better? I know that we're obviously making some strides in some ways, but what do you think are some things that other vendors and as a community we can do better to be more inclusive?
I mean, the visibility, I think, is something we touched on already. I think that's super important. Talking to other vendors, having open conversations, kind of examining your own biases and where they might be coming from. And even if it's coming from a place of like, I've just generally not thought about this before, or I know I should be doing more, but I don't know what that is. And just having open conversations with people that you trust. I mean, other queer vendors, I'm sure, would be more than happy to have conversations with people as long as it's coming from a place of like curiosity and desire to do better and to grow as individuals. I can't think of anybody who would not want to have those conversations. And also, if that's not a comfortable space for you, then finding other people who maybe are at the same level of as where you are and be like, okay, none of us really quite know what we're doing. We're a little bit uncomfortable. What are small things that we could do together that we could, make a commitment to each other that we're both going to try or all going to try to do a little bit better and take it one step at a time and do things that feel comfortable, but like you're continuing to move yourself forward. I think that could go a long way in getting people more comfortable and in diversifying the industry in ways that maybe they just don't know how to do yet.
Even just like simple little steps. It takes time, right? Like nothing's going to happen overnight. But are there any specific resources, educational tools, coaches that you know about that you would recommend for vendors to learn and do better?
I know Equally Wed has a training for becoming a more inclusive vendor. I have not actually gone through it myself, which I probably should at some point. I'm part of the community, but that doesn't mean I know everything. And who knows where I might learn something else that's useful. And then there was somebody local, a local wedding officiant who was doing inclusivity consulting with local vendors. I'm not sure if she's actually still doing it anymore. She's had some changes in her life, but that's possibly an option. I can follow up if that is still happening and let you know.
Yeah, if there is anybody out there that that you know of, or if they're still doing something like that, we can always add their information in the show notes.
And I think some Googling is always useful as a starting point. But yeah, I think Equally Wed might be one of the main kind of national programs that offers a bit of an educational opportunity for vendors.
I think it would be great for people to hear what your future plans are.
So still very early in the like planning phases, but I'm working with another queer vendor in Colorado, and we're really hoping to open a wedding attire brick and mortar store in Colorado that is specifically for the queer community and their allies, that really hones in on the holes that we feel like are there, which is mostly gender expression and gender identity, and the ability for people to find something that they wear at their wedding that feels like them. And currently, mostly that exists online, and people have to piece things together, and a lot of people don't end up happy with what they're wearing. And we really want to create a space and an experience for people to find that in person, and to kind of have those same moments that straight couple can walk into a bridal shop and have those like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to wear for my wedding moments. And people who don't fit in that binary of like a traditional white wedding dress, or just a like suit that you rent or a tux that you rent, don't often have a lot of those options. We're in the early planning stages. We're really hoping to make it a reality, but there's a lot that goes into opening a physical space and a lot of money. So we're working on that, but we're very excited about it.
No, I'm super excited for you. I'm so proud of you for taking that next step. You've been working a lot behind the scenes. I've, chatted a lot about, different brainstorming ideas and naming ideas with you
Yeah,
over
I know you
time.
were
So it's been,
instrumental in helping us nail down our name. I think you might have been the person.
I think I was, but I don't want to like take full credit for it. I mean, you chose it, so that's all that matters.
Yeah.
But yes, I think I did help with the name and stuff, and
Yeah.
it's just been really cool to see that transition over time. And yeah, I'm excited to continue supporting you in that initiative. And if anything, we can always link to. I know you've at a minimum got a landing page or like an Instagram, and we can always link to that in the show notes as well. So I'm excited to
Yeah.
share, spread the news, and have other people kind of keep tabs and support you as soon as you're ready for extra support.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And there is on our website a survey that it's geared mostly for queer couples who've been through the wedding experience, but there's a survey to just gather data about what people have experienced so far, what have been the positives, the negatives, where are the sticking points, what kinds of things are they interested in. So we're always taking any submissions we can for that. The more data we have, the more it supports our research, and that we're needed, and that we're a good business idea, and that we can hopefully use that to help us get funding along the way.
That's so exciting. Yeah, we'll definitely share the link for that. Thank you so much for coming on and telling your story and helping our community be just a little bit better at being more inclusive and finding ways to support one another. And also just thank you for your honesty and your transparency and being willing to be, open to talking about all of this.
Thank you so much for having me on. I love having the opportunities to sit down and talk with you, and then to just share our common values and get the word out, and try to make our industry better. I feel like we're both doing that in our own ways, and I love that.
Thank you everybody for listening. We're so excited to hear what you think, and hopefully everybody's on this journey with us to be a little bit better, to be a little bit more inclusive and support one another. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.